Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Streamline podcast. My guest today is my very good friend, Lance Allen. Lance is a phenomenal guitarist. I managed to say that word, phenomenal guitarist from Nashville, Tennessee. We've had the pleasure of meeting a few times in person, had a few beverages, had some great conversations, and I knew that we had to get him on the podcast. So Lance, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Glad to be here.
Well, that is very good to hear. I know it is still relatively early in the morning, and you've only had, one coffee so far?
Yeah, we just made an espresso. So double espresso with some creamer in it. I'm good to go.
Nice. So we're going to see that kick in maybe halfway into this recording.
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, Lance, nobody can tell your story better than you can, and I've had the pleasure of hearing it, but I would love for you to firstly introduce yourself and then share with the audience your story of how you got into the music industry, when you first picked up a guitar to your success on streaming services. And for anyone that's listening, there's going to be some wow moments in here, especially when you hear Lance's success that he has had. So Lance, if you could share a story with us.
Okay, so here we go. It's all about guitar, really, because when I was a kid, my dad played guitar, right? That's where I got the idea of playing guitar. He would show me some things, and of course, your parent never really has the focus to teach you, so he ended up getting me lessons with a guy named Randall, who was the local talented guitar player that happened to like to drink some beer too. So we occasionally paid him in beer for my lessons. And I was just like 11 or so at the time. And I was really into Nirvana and Metallica, that sort of music. And I had a friend named Bart, and we sort of competed. And that's how I started to fall in love with the guitar. I got better at it, and people started to take notice, that sort of thing. And eventually moved off to Ohio and took lessons from another great teacher. And that's where I learned to finger pick. And if you folks don't know what finger picking is, it's basically where I just play with my fingers and do chords and melodies, sometimes bass and sometimes rhythm at the same time. And somewhere around that time, I think I picked up a Guitar Player magazine. I was a subscriber. And in the the cover of the magazine was this, businessman dressed up. And he was carrying a briefcase, but it was actually a guitar case that looked like a briefcase. And it was like a black and white photo. And inside that Guitar Player magazine, and this was like before the internet was awesome or anything like that. So it taught you how to make a living as a guitar player. So I really was inspired by that. And I read all about touring musicians. That was one option. And teaching lessons is another option. And like teaching, like starting up clubs and groups and things like that. So I eventually started teaching lessons. And right in high school, I think I had a student learning guitar, a girl student, of course, because I was like, got to get the girlfriend or whatever. So it was fun. And I was involved in church and played in a worship band and that sort of thing. So I taught a couple of kids how to play regular chords. And in college, I had a couple of students. I went to Eastern Kentucky University. And believe it or not, when you get out of high school, your parents, they want you to get a degree in something that like might make you money down the road, right? They're like, go to school and get your environmental health science degree so you can work for OSHA or whatever. So that's why I went to Eastern Kentucky University. And after 2 years there, I heard about this program at Middle Tennessee State University where I could learn how to record music. And I thought, wow, that is my environment. I actually, out of high school, wanted to go to Berkeley, but that was really expensive, and EKU was a good option for me. So I transferred to Middle Tennessee State, started right up with the recording industry program there, and made tons of friends that played instruments and recorded late at night. They had a really nice studio, and we would basically rent or schedule our studio time at like 1 and 2 in the morning for recording purposes for our class. Amazing, right?
Wow.
And even one of the artists that we recorded when I was at MTSU is Chris Young. And if you guys that are listening know country music at all, he's a famous country artist right now. He's superstar. So Chris and I were good buddies when he was a teenager and I was in college, and we, played guitar and did little local tours and shows and stuff. But anyway, I got out of college and took a job at a music store because I met the guy at MTSU, and he was leading an open mic night basically. And he said, "Hey, you're really good. Why don't you come down to my store and teach some guitar lessons?" And he was a kind of character, but I eventually went and I learned how to, teach a group of students, or at least have more than one or two students. I'd have 15 students. And I also worked the retail side and learned a lot about the music retail business, like dealing with distributors and managing employees and budgeting and forecasting and all this sort of business stuff that I had no idea was going to apply to my later music career.
Yeah.
And so I stayed there for probably about 8 years, managing and teaching anywhere from 40 to 50 guitar students as a living. So you remember that Guitar Player magazine, something there clicked, and I went for that after college and was really pretty successful at it. And it came time for me to break off of the music store and go out on my own. And that was like the best thing ever. I was scared to leave the music store because I kind of in a way felt trapped and just limited on what I could do. But I moved away from it and actually moved out of the office into my new office and started organizing my own student schedule. And at this time, I'd already put out one guitar recording album. And it was basically a live take of me playing some songs that I made up. And I did it in the studio, and I called it Sometimes in Life. And that was probably around 2006 or so. Mm-hmm. And I did that because I was inspired by guitar players like Tommy Emmanuel, Chet Atkins, Phil Keaggy. There's a lot of them out there that do this sort of thing. So I made my own little CD and put it out there. And a couple of years later, I put another one out there called Naturally, and I recorded it with a local guy. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long after that I heard on the radio Tim Westergren talking about Pandora, and it might have been in the 2007, somewhere in there. And I'm in Nashville, so they have this, Lightning 100 has this thing called Music Business Radio. And I heard Tim Westergren on there talking about what Pandora was and what it was going to be. And he said, "We're taking submissions as well." And, Monday morning, I sent my CDs to Pandora. Mm-hmm. And it took probably 6 or 7 months to get approved. And it finally got approved. And I wasn't aware that I would make any money, I figured it was just little bits here. And of course, years went by, probably 2013. And I'm getting emails from this company called Sound Exchange saying, "Hey, you should sign up for our royalty distribution thing." And I was like, I probably don't have any royalties in there. I know my music's been on Pandora, but I'm not sure if I'd make a lot of money from that because there was no really data. I didn't know how much my music was streaming or anything.
Yeah.
So I signed up for Sound Exchange just to be safe because CD Baby was also sending me emails. "Make sure you sign your music up with Sound Exchange." So I did, and my wife and I had just taken our 10-year anniversary trip to Costa Rica, and
nice.
I was working on my own at this time, and so money was tight. We lived, pretty paycheck to paycheck because we had to use our funds for bills and things like that. So we figured we'd just spoil ourselves and eventually pay off our trip to Costa Rica. And when I got back from Costa Rica, I got a check in the mail from Sound Exchange, and amazingly, it was a lot more than the trip costed me. So it was kind of like just a blessing to have that happen to me. And I was blown away by it. And basically, they had paid me for all the years my music was being streamed on Pandora.
Wow.
That I didn't know about. So that's cool.
Wow.
And I continued to get royalties from Sound Exchange on a monthly basis. So that was kind of cool, getting the little bits of extra income for my music being played. And folks in the business world, that's called like a streaming income or a passive income. So I kind of did the work, and you just get the money. Like if you were for investing or something, your dividends would be a passive income. So I was getting this passive income and just spending it on advertisement, helping myself grow my lesson business, which has been strong ever since like the last couple of years. Because last couple of years I started to see some success on Spotify. So maybe I'll go in that direction now. And,
please. I mean, firstly, I appreciate you sharing that story. I mentioned I have heard your story before, but I know that the audience would find that really interesting and motivating and inspiring to know that, just something as simple as back in the day you mentioned with Pandora, when you would submit music by sending a CD to get on a streaming service, which sounds really bizarre, but people don't know that's how it used to have to be when you would send music to radio in general. And obviously now the submission system has changed somewhat. You can use a distributor. You mentioned CD Baby there before, or some of these platforms you can distribute directly to them as well. But not to steal your thunder here, but I want to hand it back over to you. And I know before we get into this, Lance on Spotify, his numbers are insane. I know so many artists out there that are not even close to what he is doing. So Lance, I would please just take the mic away from me and tell us your story on Spotify and how you're doing.
So with CD Baby, you're allowed to select, your digital distribution, where you want it to go. And honestly, I didn't care. So I chose all of the things, the free things, the, things that people could download for free. Spotify was on that, of course, and this was early on when Spotify was starting. And I really didn't see anything from Spotify for a while. And at this time, I think I had maybe 3 albums out. And so Spotify had 3 albums. Pandora had 3 albums. And this was before Apple Music or Deezer or any of these guys too. But I actually made sure to get all of my music in all the places, free or paid, YouTube, all of them. And maybe in 2015, somewhere there. I don't know the dates. Doesn't matter to anybody. But I was teaching an online guitar lesson, Skype guitar lesson with one of my students. And he said, hey, one of your songs is playing on this popular Spotify playlist. And I wasn't even using Spotify. I hadn't. No idea. I thought Spotify. In fact, one time I downloaded it on my computer and my computer crashed and broke. And I was thinking it was like Kazaa or one of those illegal streaming things. And when you download stuff like that, you get all this adware and stuff. I thought that's what Spotify was when I first started it. So I never got back on it until my student said, hey, your music is playing on Spotify. So out of curiosity, I logged on to Spotify and checked it out. Of course, my music was on a big playlist called Acoustic Concentration. And my student he's a lawyer. And I was like, do you think I'll get paid from that? He's like, you should, because that's going to give you a lot of streams. And if you don't get paid, let me know. I'm a lawyer, so yeah. Anyway, so like maybe 2 or 3 months down the road, I get this like check or not a check, but a digital payment from CD Baby for like $700. And this is from Spotify, right? Right. Because my song had streamed like, I don't know, 500,000 times, or I don't know how, I don't remember how, I'm just guessing based off of my average today. I was like, that's neat, Yeah. So I got this money from Pandora, which has been growing since the beginning, because the way Pandora works is you get these thumbs up and you just continue to grow slowly. So a lot of those folks that were on there early have, their music streaming a lot. But so I ended up on the Spotify playlist, and life just kept going, and I kept getting little paycheck or pretty nice paychecks from Spotify each month. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long, maybe a year or two after that, my song was pulled and another one was put in, and the money kept going. So the playlist was doing well for me. and comes along. So I'm on Spotify, and then comes along a new playlist called Peaceful Guitar. And I looked at the playlist and I thought, wow, I play that sort of stuff, right? And I looked through it, and there was a lot of my comrades on it at the time, and I wasn't on it. So I was like, why am I not on it? I need to figure this out. And that's when I started doing some research. And I found out that Spotify employees and curators, they kind of pick songs based on, what's doing well, how many playlists they're on, how many saves you're getting. And another thing, like, is the song getting streamed past 30 seconds or whatever? I think it's called a skip rate.
Yep.
If someone skips a song, and that's kind of like a negative thing for you. And in my world, instrumental music, it's sort of in people's background. So a lot of times I would imagine like somebody skipping a song because it sounds terrible on the guitar. But I can imagine like in the R&B world, if something doesn't have a groove or a nice little hook to it, they might skip that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to jump in there for those people. When Lance mentioned skip rates, yes, that is part of it. The other thing is, if your song plays for more than 30 seconds, that counts as a stream. So if somebody listens to your song for 31 seconds or 50 seconds or a minute, that counts as a stream, regardless of if they listen to the rest of the track. But if somebody listens to your song for 15 seconds, you're not getting paid for that because that's not counting as a stream. Another thing is, whenever you see a preview of a song from Spotify in your Facebook feed, your Twitter feed, wherever, you'll notice it's 29 seconds because they're not going to pay for somebody to listen to that or potentially just scroll past and hear it. They're hoping that you'll go there and actually listen to the song in its entirety.
Well, so during my research, I was like, I'm going to start promoting myself on Spotify. And really, I hadn't Googled much. This is just in the initial stages. So I was on Instagram, and basically I'm just posting screenshots of my Spotify page saying, hey, if there's anybody out there that might be interested in listening to my music, follow me on Spotify. And I'd use as many hashtags as I could. I think you can do up to 30. And this guy, I had several people reach out to me like that said, pay for streams. And I was a little leery of that. But one guy reached out to me and he said, hey, you should buy my book. And it was this guy named George Goodrich, and he had this book called The Slotify Method. And I was like, okay, is it really that good? Am I going to learn anything from that? Because CD Baby at the time had put out a very similar PDF, which I got for free from their website. And a lot of the information from the CD Baby pamphlet was similar to what George had wrote in his book. But George is like, I'll just give you the book. Tell me what you think. So he gave me the book and I read through it and I was like, okay, I'm going to try a few of these things. And basically what the book and the CD Baby pamphlet was telling you is you need to get on a lot of independent playlists. And for those of you that don't know, Spotify too, well, there's several different kinds of playlists. You have the independent playlist, which is like you and me create a playlist of music. And then there's the Spotify editorial playlist, which those are the dreamy playlists you want to eventually get on. And I think there's another one that's like a record label sort of thing, or maybe a brand. Yeah. So those are hard to get on unless you're like on a record label, I would imagine, or associated with a brand. And so I started searching on Spotify all these different playlists related to guitar music, literally hundreds of thousands of them. Some of them with one follower, some of them with 40,000, some of them with a few followers. And what I did is I would find the playlists on Spotify and see who created the playlist. If they had a name, a lot of people don't have names on Spotify, they're just usernames. And I would look that person up on Facebook. That was probably my first place to go because a lot of people would sign into Spotify using Facebook, and their profile picture would show up and you could match the profile picture to the Spotify profile picture. And basically I would friend them and introduce myself and say, hey, I'm Lance Allen. I'm a musician and I found you on Spotify and I'd love for you to hear my music. Because I see that you are interested in this kind of music. And that's it. I would just send them a link, and I always introduce myself And I always told them why I'm reaching out to them, because on Facebook you get all these creepy people, like nowadays it's a bunch, so you got to be careful on Facebook how you communicate with people, because people don't really want to be bothered, I guess. But if you go with a purpose, then that's good. So I did this for like an hour each day for probably 6 or 8 weeks. So I was able to reach out to probably about 1,000 people, and some of them responded and some of them have yet to respond. And I just I kept consistent with it. Every once in a while I'll go back to those messages, because you can search on Facebook. I made sure to type in playlist in every one of my messages, and I can search that keyword. And nowadays it's crazy. I've got all kinds of stuff that wouldn't relate to that. But at the time I would go back and search and just like hit the little thumbs up button, because sometimes people will only get messages when they're online, and they might see it when they're online. And I got on some pretty good playlists at that point. And one of them was a reading playlist. And I just thought of all these different, things that my music could go into. One of them would have been sleep. And the other one was like concentration, or like I even looked up people like keywords in the Spotify search thing called sad songs. And I found lots of playlists that I could potentially be on sad songs with some of my slower, minor sort of songs. And I did a lot of that. And this is actually sooner that I got picked up for the Peaceful Guitar playlist, because I was using LinkedIn to reach out to Spotify employees. And one guy said, "Hey, just use this form." I was like, "Well, God, I've been looking for this forever."
Yeah.
And this is before Spotify opened the doors and said everybody could submit to an editorial person. And I got the form, and I always would send him an email like, "Hey, here's, my new release," or what. I started doing singles on Spotify when I figured out that, let's see, I wanted to be on a playlist called Instrumental Pop. So I started doing cover songs so that I could get on that playlist. And I did. And I developed a relationship with that guy that worked that playlist. And we actually met up once and had coffee and did something just like this. We just talked about our lives and that sort of thing. And, we never forgot that. So I get on his playlist all the time now. And let's see, where was I was talking about? Okay, so oh man, get me straight.
That's okay. Why don't, if you want, why don't you take a sip of that coffee that's probably sitting there, and let me just sort of add in a few pieces there. So
it's all gone.
Oh, that's okay. So you mentioned obviously George Goodrich and his book. I have to admit that book is actually one of the first pieces that I read. I was already pretty deeply involved in playlisting personally, but I was always hungry for more information. So shout out to George Goodrich and his book as well. I believe it's got a longer title now. But if you search for George Goodrich on Amazon, all of those stores, it is there. More importantly, go to Lance Allen's website and click his link because he's the man that shouted out that book. And
that's okay. I also in all that research, I found your book as well, and yours was at the time it had some more information about using social media, and that was really good. Now I know I've got a little section there now in your book, a nice little update.
You've been immortalized in the book.
Yeah. So Work Hard, Playlist Hard was a great book to have and to work out some of those things as well. Now, not everything's going to apply to everybody. You need to pick sort of the best thing that fits you and your lifestyle and your kind of music. My thought process on it was I've got to be everywhere and I've got to do everything I can to succeed. That's kind of how I went into this. I saw the opportunity and then I was like, I'm going to 10X this. And what I mean by 10X is work harder than anybody else, or at least try to do 10X, just more than 1X,
Yeah.
So I put in the effort and did all the hard work, which was, spending time on the computer, trying to make new friends and influence people. And, I got on that that peaceful guitar playlist. And by the way, when I got on that peaceful guitar playlist, that sort of set my numbers off big because it was a growing playlist at the time. And I think once I got on there, I went from probably like 50,000 monthly listeners to 270,000 monthly listeners or something like that. And I was still putting out music. Actually, this is a funny story. The second one that I got on peaceful guitar. Here we go. This will be good. So I decided I'm going to record a song that sounds like all the other songs that are on peaceful guitar or in a similar fashion.
Genius.
So, yeah. So I did that. I set up in my living room with my garage band and a single microphone. And I didn't record in a studio or anything fancy. Refrigerator humming in the background. It's kind of a rainy day, and I use that. It's rainy here now, so I use that as sort of an inspiration. And I got my classical guitar because all the songs on that playlist were similar to the sound of the nylon string guitar. And I had this little idea that I was working on. It didn't have a title or anything, and I just recorded it one take. Mm-hmm. And I titled it Raining Slowly because that was the nature of what was happening. I took my guitar out in the grass and took a picture of it. I used font candy to create a album cover, used their font, and it's my guitar with some little drops on it. And I titled it Raining Slowly, and I submitted it to my distributor. And 2 days later, it was on Spotify. And 2 days later, I was looking at my Spotify.artist. I'm like, man, this song's getting a lot of streams. And this was before Spotify would send you an email saying, you've been added to a playlist. You know, your fans are going to be excited or whatever. So I had to go and figure it out. And I looked and saw that it got added to Peaceful Guitar after the first, I just released it. And 2 days later, it was on Spotify. And it was on a big playlist.
Wow.
And I don't even think I may have sent in the form at the time, which they don't do anymore. All those forms are closed off and can't use them.
Yeah.
But I think I may have sent it to a couple of LinkedIn contacts saying, hey, here's a new song. I stayed up late so that that'd be their first thing to see in their inbox, you know. And it only took me about an hour of work to do that song and get it released. And it really paid off. And I'll be honest, you know, it was plus more than $1,000 a month for one song being on the Peaceful Guitar playlist. And I've been on it for 2 years. And I've had up to 3 songs on there, and I've had a number 1 position on Peaceful Guitar. And when you have a higher up position on a playlist, that's like, booyah, lots of streams. Yeah, I went up to over 1 million monthly listeners when I was number 1 on Peaceful Guitar. Wow. And I was on there for 14 days. And that was nice. And now I'm trying to do the same thing. I've got other songs that are Peaceful Guitar ready. I even also did an album of piano music so that I could target peaceful piano. And I've been working and collaborating with other artists. I've got a singer that I've worked with named Ryan Fine, and he's great. And we went in and did these unique cover songs, and we've been releasing those as singles because now you can submit to Spotify with singles. So what's the point of doing an album unless the album is like a part of a story, basically? And so we've been doing singles and trying to get on, you know, big playlists. Who knows?
Wow. So I love the that kind of brings back to why I wanted to include you in my book. And another reason why I wanted to get you on here today is where you saw a need for a specific style of music on those playlists and realized that's pretty close to what I do. I could create that. And so you sat down and, like you said, very simple. You just sat down. You didn't go into the studio, and you just simply hit record on a rainy day, recorded that
Garage Band. Yeah, GarageBand, free program on my computer that was about to die.
Well, I'm glad it didn't. And as you said, in 1 hour, that was it. You put it up, and you've got that ongoing revenue from that song being in those playlists. And you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, at one point you peaked at 1 million monthly listeners.
Yeah, that was January last year.
Wow.
I was on Peaceful Guitar, number 1 spot for 14 days, I think.
Wow. And For those people listening right now, 1 million monthly listeners is not just 1 million streams. That's 1 million unique people that have listened to at least one song from Lance. So the number of streams would actually be higher than the number of monthly listeners, because there's people who would potentially listen to 5, 6 or more of your songs on various playlists, especially if they're going to Peaceful Guitar as their go-to playlist a few times a week. So that's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, actually, I keep track. I go to Spotify Artist all the time. Like I check it, like I wake up and that's the first thing I check.
Wow.
And at the time, I think when that one was on, I almost got to 3 million streams.
Wow.
In a month. And now I'm getting close to that now with all my catalog. And go back to George for a second. He did a blog post about me being a guitar slinging dad and why I have more streams than anybody else or whatever. And it talked about me and how I worked, basically my story. But in that story, I said something to the fact that I would need about 60 million streams to pay off my house.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a goal that I set, and I wrote it down, and it's on a little, sheet of paper hanging up in my office. And I look at it every day when I'm in there, and I see that goal every time, and it just reminds me that I wanted to do that. And I'm really close to 60 million streams now total, just on Spotify. And I'm not like paying my house off, actually, and reinvesting in myself, but I am putting more into the mortgage. I'm paying my mortgage payment with all the revenue from Spotify. We're not talking about Amazon or Apple. Those guys also are a part of the whole passive income stream for me, but Spotify is kind of the winner at this point for me. And so it's taking care of my family right now. And last year we needed a new car, so it was no problem to go out and just buy a new car.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What an amazing story. And just, for people out there who go, oh, my music's too unique. I only have a niche market. That's actually a blessing, I believe, in a way, because there's not that many guitarists out there who are doing what you do, actively promoting themselves and, to quote what you said with George, slotifying, and actually putting that time in to promote their music. And, that's the best way to actually get it in front of these curators, because they may love your music if they ever hear it. So put it in front of them, send it to them, slide into their DMs, do whatever you do, because, you're a prime example that works.
Well, here's another unique thing that you can do. And I started this after I basically, when I wanted to get on that Peaceful Guitar playlist, I looked at all the people that were on there, and I would reach out to these artists and say, hey, did you know you're on this playlist? I'm like, how did you get on there? And I made a friend named Dennis up in Canada, and him and I started talking, and he was on the playlist at the time. And he was like, you really, I'm going to make some money. I was like, yeah, you're going to make some money. I've been making money on this other playlist. And he didn't believe it. And we just started chit chatting. And sure enough, he made a big paycheck. And this was still before I was on the playlist. And Dennis and I started talking about Spotify for artists and making playlists and things like that. So we actually came up with the idea. I came up with it, and he sort of agreed with me. And I created a playlist called Acoustic Guitar Cafe. And what I was going to do was grow the playlist by putting in all these guitar players that I know whose music is on Spotify. And basically the rule was, hey, I'm going to put you in the playlist. Make sure that you share it to your fans, put it in your emails, put it on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and let's grow this playlist, because if we grow a fan base, we can start seeing streams from this playlist. So I started a group of people to do that. And eventually I said, okay, who wants to do a Spotify ad and see if this will work? So I grouped about maybe 15 people, and they chipped in $20 each. And I managed to create a little radio advertisement on Spotify for my playlist. And it didn't really do so hot. So I was able to end the advertising campaign and put the money back into Facebook ads. And I was able to reach more people through Facebook ads, and started finding followers and listeners to my own playlist, which had my own music in it and everybody else's music. And then I created a Facebook secret group just for my acoustic guitar cafe people. And we start sharing advice, and people start releasing songs, and they all create playlists. So anytime somebody creates a new song, it gets put on their playlist that they created. And sometimes they'll put it up at the top so that you get an initial bump, and then they'll shuffle it down or whatever. But now I'm getting like every week there's somebody releasing something in that group, whether it's a single or an album or whatever. So, and I've actually been collaborating with some other guitar players in the group now. And that's a really exciting thing to see that happen. As a result of Acoustic Guitar Cafe, I've seen some of my comrades get put on Peaceful Guitar.
Great.
As a result.
Yeah, and I mean that's got to start feeding the algorithm, and also telling Spotify, hey, these artists are similar, so let's start grouping them together. Let's start, looking at artists that are similar to Lance Allen, and that's definitely going to help as well. And obviously the group is a great idea. You've got artists with a similar talent, similar interest. Within a similar genre even. And you're all helping each other. You're sharing advice. You're sharing each other's music. And that playlist, I mean, it's a really well curated playlist as well. It's not just a mash of anyone that that's released music. It's curated properly with the intention that people are going to enjoy listening, and they're going to discover new music, and they're going to keep listening to it, which is really important. Good curation is key in a playlist, especially if you're going to put money in advertising it. You want to keep people hooked on there and listening the entire time.
That's right. And sometimes I don't really like make the order specific. Sometimes I'll listen to it, but I use a website called Text Mechanic to shuffle all of my tracks because I want it to be kind of fair, So there's over 300 tracks in there, that's crazy for like a playlist, but somebody's going to listen to it and just put it on for a while because it's kind of background music. If you look at Spotify playlists, they're like the pop ones and ones with songs like that people sing, there's usually 50 to 70 tracks. There's never really more than that. But for the instrumental thing, if it lasts all week, people will hear something different each time. I know in Pandora, I had a friend that had Pandora for his restaurant, and he would play it, and it would eventually start over basically. So with me shuffling the music, it kind of is interesting. It's not the same thing every time. And I get new artists, requesting to be in there. In fact, some people send me tracks that don't even match. They even tell me, I listened to your playlist and I'd like to be included. And they didn't listen to it because it clearly says that it's instrumental acoustic guitar.
Yeah, that's it. And, that's why it's so important to actually do your research if you're going to say that. Don't just go, I listened to your playlist, my music's a perfect fit, and then send a dubstep track to Lance, because he's probably not going to listen to anything else you ever send him, even if you do decide in the future to release an acoustic guitar cover of a dubstep track or something like that. So just, copy and paste. Yeah, sure. You may do that for the majority of the email or the message you're sending, but at least just click play on that playlist and listen to it first, because you could be wasting your time and you could be wasting that curator's time, and it's not going to get you anywhere. And then you could move on to the next one where you find a playlist that is a great fit, and you can send an email that's a little more personalized because you've got that little bit of extra time, and you're going to find better results by actually matching up curators that have playlists that actually fit your music.
I feel like the last year or even 2 years, I was just at a good time. It was a good timing to start reaching out to people, because now everybody seems to be doing it, and it's becoming more limited. I mean, you have to like really think about how you're going to present yourself to somebody, because like you said, they've got regular lives and they don't want to fuss with their playlist that they're not getting any benefit from other than just their own listening pleasure, So here's an example. Maybe it's an example of one that I knew I wanted to be on. I'll give a couple examples here, because I wanted to do anything possible to get on some playlist within reason. I wasn't going to do crazy things, but one lady I wanted to reach out to wasn't responding to my messages on Facebook. So I actually did something crazy and I reached out to her husband. Yeah. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a very ballsy move, And you know what? He listened to my music and liked it. And told her about it. And then she finally messaged me and said, "Hey, Lance, thank you for sharing your music with me. I've added it to my playlist, and now I've become friends with this lady." And we chat every once in a while, and she's watched my Spotify career grow. So that was really interesting. Now, I wouldn't suggest that for everybody. You really have to take... I didn't just email him and say, "Hey, I'm trying to get in touch with your wife," or whatever.
Lance, I have to ask, how did that approach look? How did you do that without being creepy and without getting cussed out by this guy or worse?
Oh, God. Thinking back, I was probably like, it was very general because I didn't want to cause any harm or anything, And honestly, I wouldn't recommend anybody do it. But if you do something like that, just say, "Hey, I'm Lance on Spotify," or "Hey, put your name in there, not my name." Well, if you want to put my name in there, make sure you put my link in there too. But just reach out and be kind. Okay. Don't be creepy. Say, "Hey, I'm a musician on Spotify. I'd like to share my music with you. If you're interested." And then that might open up a doorway. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened for me. And I did some things that probably would be considered not unethical, but just not right on Facebook terms, So like one of them that I wanted to get on was a sad songs playlist. And I went to this lady's page and she wouldn't respond to messages or anything. So I saw she had an open comment thread, she could comment on any of her pictures without being connected to her. Her fault, not mine. Okay. So I scrolled through and I found something related to Spotify. Mm-hmm. Right? I didn't want to just comment on a picture of her with a puppy or whatever, and say, "Hey, I'm Lance, check out my music." So I found a Spotify post and that was my opportunity to suggest my music.
Great.
And she got on to me and said that I was, whatever. She'll never, so I went out of my way to try and reach out to this person. And,
okay.
But so, move on from those situations. And, anyway, so that may have been a little weird. Don't comment on people's Facebook posts. Unless, you never know, right? I say go for it if you do it in a kind, presentable way.
Look, if you had one mutual friend and you asked that mutual friend, that would be another way, of course. But yeah, I mean, look, I admire your hustle and your determination. And
I don't do that often, by the way.
No, of course. And you know what? Like you said, you're not saying that people should go and try this, but at the same time, she could have responded positively and, or perhaps didn't respond at all. And then a few weeks later, you appeared in Peaceful Guitar or, in a playlist and she going, I remember that guy. You know what? This is pretty good. Maybe I'll write back to him. And you mentioned with all those DMs that you sent where people haven't responded. It's funny. Because obviously my background, we're not talking about my story, but releasing music as well. I have messages from, let's say, 2012 that I sent to people where I sent them a track and no response, which happens. DMs don't always actually get read by people. And, now recently they've been hitting me up. "Hey, man, I've got a new track out. Would you consider it for your playlist?" And then they've actually seen the previous message from...
That's funny.
7 years ago where I sent them my track and they didn't respond. And, it's funny. I mean, I don't take any offense to it. I know that I'm terrible with messages and emails. I try my best, but it's hard. And so it's funny. There's that reminder there that this person tried to reach me X amount of years ago and I didn't respond. So maybe I should actually make the effort to respond now because I really want to connect with them. So I never hold grudges about anything in this industry. And, especially DMs, you don't know, you could have reached someone at a really bad time. You could have had a really bad approach at that time and you didn't realize. Yeah. So
I would suggest for anybody that's going to communicate with people to read that book, How to Make Friends and Influence People. There's a lot of really great techniques in that. And that's what you want to do. You want to be able to communicate in a friendly way because you're selling yourself.
Yes.
You're selling your music, which is part of you, and you're selling yourself. So you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the best way possible without, a door being slammed in your face. And that's how, like, a lot of times I got endorsement deals with guitar brands, and I've done work like that too, since on the other side of my business, the music performing and doing clinics for the Takamine guitar brand and various other brands. But you want to make sure, you develop good relationships with people. And one of these playlisters I developed a good relationship with, and now I'm teaching them guitar lessons. And I just said, hey man, I'm on this playlist and I'm making this much money probably from your playlist. I'm getting this many streams. I'll give you free guitar lessons as a gratitude toward you. And we've become pretty good friends as a result of that. And every time I release a song, guess what? Boom, on the top of his playlist.
Yeah.
And, he takes care of me, and I take care of him by making him laugh and teaching him guitar. And now I know his family and everything's going good. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's it. And, it is important. You have to remember that it's not a robot at the other end that you're reaching out to. It's a real person. And if they like you, it doesn't mean that they want to be your friend or they think you're the best person, anything like that. But basically, if they like you, they're okay to hear from you. And over time, that will grow and develop. So, I mean, like you said, you've had these relationships or call them friendships. Perhaps is a better term. You've developed these friendships over time where you just reached out and you were this nice, polite guy with a really cool beard, and you had a guitar in your picture, and they knew what you were all about very quickly. And then over time, you got talking, and they realized that there's more to you than that. You're a family guy. You love coffee. You know how to play yo-yo. You know how to do yo-yo tricks. And, all of this cool stuff. And then they go, you know what? I can't wait to hear from Lance again. And then the last thing that you have to do is just send them that track, which. That's, you don't even have to ask when it gets to that point with people. They're following you. They're going to see it in their release radar, and they're going to go, "Oh, Lance, yeah,
that's an amazing thing now. Release radar,
that. Yeah."
I got to tell a quick story. Well, one thing: be persistent with your stuff too. Always don't give up just because nobody's responding to you. You have to be persistent and pursue it with passion. Just keep going. Because it took time, to get up to where I'm at. And I really have higher goals in mind. So I'd like to be double what I'm doing now. And that's kind of where I'm set at now. And having goals and being persistent with is very important. So I've lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. You were saying about being persistent, and then you always have goals. And once you've achieved those goals, you always have to have the next goal ready. Like you said, you want to double it.
Yeah, I was sorry. I was going to say something about Release Radar. That right there is a great tool. So,
yes.
Again, every day I post a screenshot of my Spotify thing, and I use different hashtags on Instagram. Instagram's kind of where it's at now for finding the 20 somethings, and those are the people that I think are using Spotify the most, 20 to 34 or something in there, and using all these different hashtags, inviting people to find your Spotify page. And I've been using stories a lot more lately too, which stories is amazing. You can see how many eyeballs you've got looking at your story. In Spotify, you can actually share to your story now. And anytime Spotify gives you a tool, I suggest you use the tool as much as you can from Spotify's app. Pasting a link is fine, but how Spotify, they'll know if they get a link referral. But if you're clicking from the Spotify page, sharing in all these various places, then that'll pop up first probably on their end. And I from what I hear, the Spotify editorial team, they have a whole nother type of program that looks like Spotify, but it has much more data in it. You've maybe seen it. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but their program is intense. It shows all kinds of, graphs and stuff, I would imagine in it. So you want to make sure you're doing everything possible to increase those graphs on their end,
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely Instagram. Keep posting on Instagram.
Definitely. And, with Instagram, like you said, you can swipe up and add a link in there. You can share directly from the Spotify app. So it will actually have in the top left corner in Instagram, it will say, play this song on Spotify. And then to add to that, in Instagram, you can choose the music icon and you can add your song so people can hear a clip of it and go, oh, I love this. I want to keep listening. play on
So I'll do like 3
Spotify.
or 4 of those. I'll do 3 or 4 of those. I haven't done them in a while, but I'll like post a picture of like nighttime, at night, because that's when I like to post on Instagram when I'm sitting in bed. And I'll put like these really peaceful songs in these nighttime posts, and I'll try to do these little things that'll get people to click on it, because you actually have to click on it to listen all the way through. So I'll like draw an arrow and say listen all the way through, or click and enjoy. And some people stick around on it, and you get that data if someone clicks on it, or what do they call a sticker tap maybe. So make sure that you're thinking of clever ways to get that engagement going.
Definitely. And I'm going to ask you if you're okay sharing this tip with people, or if you prefer to keep it to yourself. But I know that there's a few certain tips on Instagram that you have relating to hashtags. And it's up to you if you're comfortable sharing, or if you prefer to keep that under your hat, and we'll just cut this bit out after. But
that's okay.
How do you feel about sharing with the audience here? Because it's fantastic.
Okay, so if you're using stories and you use a hashtag, maybe 1 or 2. You don't want to use too many. And you can actually use the text editor to put a hashtag into your stories. For example, if I take a picture of my acoustic guitar and I'm going to post it on my story, use the hashtag acoustic guitar. And you can actually hide that acoustic guitar by shrinking it, or when you actually, I think you can hide it behind a picture as well. It takes a little bit of manipulating to figure that out, but you can do it. But when you do that, it looks fresh. You don't have like hashtags and all this messy looking photo. But what happens when you put the hashtag in there is you post in the hashtag stories, and a lot of people are viewing the hashtag acoustic guitar story. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that my music link is in that picture. Maybe I use that guitar to record that song with, or maybe it didn't. I can say I did or didn't. It doesn't really matter. But I'll get like 200 or 300 eyeballs on that story just from using the hashtag acoustic guitar. And I did a series of electric guitar ones the other day where I was just playing riffs and stuff. And I don't think I linked it back to my Spotify, but I typed in there hashtag guitar, and I think I had like 1,200 eyeballs on one of the videos.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's okay. Make sure you use a hashtag in your Insta story, and you'll show up in that hashtag's Insta story, which is a lot of eyeballs.
That is fantastic. And you mentioned that on Instagram, people, the same way you would follow another user, the same way I follow you, you can follow a hashtag. And, if you go to hashtag music, it probably says 14 million followers or whatever. So you're fighting a bigger audience there. But if you go hashtag acoustic cafe or acoustic guitar, there's a smaller audience, and they're focused specifically on that. So when they see that in their story, they're going to pay attention, especially when the image is reading them.
Hashtag Spotify curator.
Oh,
make yourself a video saying, "Hello, Spotify. Thank you for curating my music into your editorial playlist." And that's it.
Yeah.
You never know, right?
You never know, and you might get their attention, because if I worked at Spotify, I would be following hashtags and seeing what people are saying. The same with any company. You're always monitoring. You have to know what people are saying on social media. The other thing you mentioned was hashtags, how you can hide them behind an image in the story, of course. But another tip there is, if you have a single color background, if you have a blue background, just write all the hashtags in text. Make the text color the same as the background. It disappears, and it's right there.
Yeah, that's another trick. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work if you've got a big, beautiful, multicolour picture, but that's when you just simply put the text in first and then drag another image in over the top.
I did find out that when you share from Spotify your album, there's like a little link in the upper left-hand corner you can click to take you to Spotify.
Yes.
And it'll show the album cover on the it'll generate like a color similar, or it works.
Yeah.
So, and you can increase that album cover or decrease it. And when you increase it, you can hide text and things underneath it.
Exactly. And then whenever you touch on that image, it brings it forward, which pushes the text back behind it.
There you go. So, and honestly, I've never seen a lot of success using a lot of hashtags on Insta stories. So in post, yes, it's fine. I think you can still find new folks on general post. But as far as like Insta stories, usually 1 or 2, no more than 3 does better.
Yeah. And also make sure you always tag a location. I mean, don't tag where you live, don't tag your house, but tag the city that you're in at that time, or tag,
Right.
if you went to a coffee shop nearby that day, tag that general area, because what happens is people actually follow locations on Instagram as well.
So I didn't know that. So I'm going to do that next time.
So to give you an idea, last time I went to Nashville last year, the CD Baby DIY Con, of course, I followed all the CD Baby stories and hashtags. I also followed the Nashville hashtag. And so I got to see all of these posts of different events that were happening around Nashville that day. And I'd see people at these cool spots and I'd go, I want to go check that out. I just saw it in my story. That looks great. And so by doing that, by adding Nashville as a location for yourself, you're going to potentially find a whole new audience that's local that, may come and see you if you're doing a seminar, if you're doing a performance, whatever it is.
Yeah. By the way, I did a nice little thing there at their CD Baby conference, and you can actually view that on Facebook. And I got the opportunity to do this, and I thought it would be cool to have the most views. So I boosted that video. And it got the most views, and again, hopefully leading people back to, I'm going to go check out Lance. Oh, his music is pretty good. I'm going to listen. My kids will like this or whatever,
Yeah.
So who knows? I thought that was kind of clever, and also like I use YouTube a lot too. Mm-hmm. So my YouTube channel is Guitar Lancer, and it's a lot of reviews of guitar related stuff or music related stuff. Mm-hmm. And every video, there's a call to action at the end to find my music on your favorite streaming service. And I make sure I link to Spotify and all the info places. And I actually created a web page off of my web page that's like lanceallenmusic.com/Spotify. I did one for Spotify and Pandora and Apple. And basically, it's a hidden page that if you were using Google, you might find it and then see, like for Spotify, for example, just that page talks about me on Spotify and some of the playlists that I'm on, and I'm promoting Spotify. There's a follow button on there from the Spotify API. You can get a button to post on your website. Mm-hmm. And, that sort of thing shows up on your Google search. So if you're Googling Lance Allen Spotify, you're going to find my page. That's a good sign from like a Spotify employee. If they search you up, Lance Allen Spotify, and they see that you have a web page created promoting their service. So that's bonus points.
Definitely. And, that's right up there. I mean, that's one step ahead of what I would have said, which is just making sure that in Spotify for Artists, you have a bio and you've uploaded some photos and you've linked to your social media. You actually created a page on your website dedicated to your presence on Spotify, which is fantastic. And like you said, they're going to search you and they're going to see that. And you give love, you get love as well. So, obviously your music has to be right. Your music has to be great to be considered for these playlists. But the effort that you're putting in is obviously getting noticed as well and is being very well accepted, which is great.
Yeah. And another note, I got a song on that Peaceful Guitar playlist. Mm-hmm. And so I got a third song on there with a collaboration with a violinist that I did. And there was a couple of violin tracks on Peaceful Guitar where guitar is the main focus. And it got pulled off in December, and I was really bummed by it because that's like a chunk of money, And then I was like, oh, well, you're going to do it again. So if something like that happens, which it will, you'll get pulled off a playlist.
Yeah.
It could happen again. You could get on that playlist again. I know your band just got on a playlist. I don't know if you're still on there.
Yeah.
But basically, you keep putting out singles, being consistent. You're always going to be getting on release radar if you're submitting more than a week in advance and doing the editorial thing. And if you're building your following, that's like, okay, so I have 4,500 followers on my Spotify page, which if you listen to this podcast, I'd love for you guys to come follow me on the old Spotify, because then my music will show up and you like it because most everybody likes what I do.
And we are going to link that in the description as well. So anywhere you're listening to this podcast, there's going to be a link in the description to Lance as well. So you can find him and follow him.
Yeah, listen to any, you can listen on any of the streaming services.
Yeah.
Spotify is just where it's at for me. And so I feel like an ambassador for the brand since I'm, doing really well with them.
Yeah.
Just a sec. I was
Take your
thinking
time, man. We've been going for a long time here. This is great. I love our conversations because they just keep going because your head is just full of so much knowledge and you tell the stories so dang well. You can imagine, for anyone that's listening, well, I hope you're still listening right now, but you can imagine what it's like when we have a couple of beers and we get talking. It's just, we could talk all night about this.
Man, if you guys are having a hard time figuring out what to do, take a nature walk. That's about the best thing to some people call them gratitude walks, and I like to ride a bicycle, so I'll just go ride a bike for about 10 miles, and I come home and I'm ready to do some things that I've been thinking of, and on that little trip. So time by yourself is a good way to find something to do. No phones or anything like that. Just kind of away from your electronic device.
Yes.
Yeah. I had something on my head and now I forgot it. When you get older, you start to lose your train of thought.
Look, Lance, no matter how old you get, there's always going to be someone that's older than you and you're going to be a kid to them. So,
that's right.
I love it. I always figured when I get to this age, I would feel like an old man, but I realized that I'm still a kid to someone else. So you're only as old as you feel. So it's just, but like you said, while you're trying to figure out what you're going to say there, going for a walk is so important. When you're sitting there and you just get writer's block, or you've been extra creative, or you've been working hard on pitching your music, or slotifying once again.
That's become a normal term for me.
I love that term. Once it gets to that point where you're staring at the screen blankly, or you're looking at all these tabs you have open, that's a good time to just close the lid on your laptop or turn off your monitor, turn off your screen, and go for a quick walk. It's amazing what going outside for 5-10 minutes and just a change of scenery will do for you. You come back, you've got fresh ears, you've cleared your head.
This is true. It works.
It's funny. It does make us sound like old men. Oh, I just need to go for a walk and get some air, and I'll be fine. It's not. It's but it does really help. And so if you are feeling a bit overwhelmed or a bit stressed out, or you're not quite sure what to do next, go for a quick walk. I mean, some of the best ideas that I've had have been while I'm on a walk, because I have nothing else feeding into my ears. I'm just out there and something goes into my head and I come back and I go, I got to do this. I got to do this now.
Yeah, man.
So how you going there, man? I think we might wrap this up soon.
I think the walk thing is a good advice for people, because I know I got bogged down on playlist searching and stuff, and then all of a sudden people are like, hey, Spotify's not the only thing, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to go on over to Apple and all this other stuff. And take your time with little bits of things. This is not a quick thing. It's a business that, think of it as a business, and business takes a while to grow. You're not going to become an overnight success unless you're really, really hot and sing really well. Yeah. Well, actually, we know you don't have to sing really well. The hot thing, that works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, just keep at it. Keep pursuing, keep persistent, and make sure you're passionate about it. And, there you go.
That's it. Well, let's wrap this up. Let's finish off. So tell people where they can find you online. I know you've mentioned some of the handles, but let's just tell them one more time, all the places that they can find you online.
Yeah, you could just Google Lance Allen or guitarlancer.com. Mm-hmm. Guitar Lancer is my, sort of pseudonym for my brand and everything. Mm-hmm. And there's guitar lessons out there. There's Spotify stuff. If you're looking for a guitar, I've probably done a review on it, Instagram and Facebook, all that's going to be Guitar Lancer. Twitter is Guitar Lancer. Mm-hmm. Everything is Guitar Lancer.
Fantastic. Well, lastly, I like to end this with a final piece of advice, or it could be some words of wisdom. It doesn't necessarily have to be music related, could be life related. Whatever you would like to share with the audience, this is your time to do it.
Right.
And I put him on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. I actually just said it recently. So pursue with passion persistently and set goals, whether you set higher goals sometimes, but make sure you write them down and you see them every day. And that'll help you keep on track with the persisting. So that's the best advice I could give if you're going for something, and put in the effort. Don't just sit around.
Definitely. And you are proof that if you put in the effort, you stay persistent, it will happen. So, Lance, I really want to thank you for taking the time. I know we had an extended conversation here, and I'm truly grateful for you to be able to switch off from everything that you're doing to spend some time with me and talk to the audience and everyone that's listening out there. And I encourage everyone that's listening, go and follow Lance online, even if acoustic guitar isn't necessarily your jam. Watching how Lance navigates social media and streaming platforms is going to inspire you, regardless of what genre of music you're putting out. You watch this guy and you're going to learn stuff just by watching him. I mean, I've learned stuff by watching him. That's why I put him in the book.
So, oh, shucks.
Oh,
hey, and I'm going to be 40 this year. So remember, wow. You're not too old to do, if you're like 35 and you're feeling like you're old, or, 30, even if you're 50, I mean, one of the guys that got on the big playlist is in his 50s, maybe 60, right? So, okay, whatever.
Yeah, might just retire a bit earlier. Why not? Whatever, it's, but yeah, look, Lance, thank you once again. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I look forward to catching up with you in Nashville very soon. And I hope you have a fantastic day.
We're going to have Frosties, buddy.
Excellent. Thank you, my friend, Lance Allen. Thank you.